Yeah, I forgot it, project review until about halfway through. Does anyone need closed captioning? Okay, perfect. I can turn that on anytime if anyone needs
What did
it.
you say?
Anybody need the live transcript?
That was a joke.
Oh, duh. Okay, smart Alec.
Okay, so called to order at 6:35 with a quorum between Javier, Sam, Brad, Paul, and myself, and our perpetual honorary member, Corla, to have you here. So thanks for everyone for coming tonight. I apologize, I did not get minutes typed up from our last meeting. The video is online if anyone needs to reference it, but hopefully by the next one, I will have had time to make the formal minutes for both that meeting and this one. That being said, we have a agenda with just a couple items on it for tonight. Motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
All right, Sam motions.
Okay.
Javier seconds. All in favor? All right, unanimous. Okay, I think that's all we have for housekeeping. Does anyone have any non-agenda comment? Okay, I do just want to make a quick land acknowledgement that, you know, we're assembled here making discussions and recommendations for land use decisions on what is historically Kumeyaay land. So just want to point that out. And if there aren't any others, let's move on. So originally Sam had proposed kind of an information item that could dovetail into action, discussing crime, in particular, potential change in rates of crime on the peninsula. And we were hoping that we might be able to get some information from Community Officer Sir Willow. I wrote to him and have not heard back, so I don't have any info from his office to share. I've been able to track down a few pieces of information, or rather sites where there is information, but I haven't had time to kind of size it, if you will. I found a kind of like an ArcGIS site that has data, but neighborhood by neighborhood. There's 4 or 5 neighborhoods in the Peninsula community represented in this data, but you know, for the goal would be to make some quick graphs so we can look at how things are changing. It goes all the way back to 2007. But I was not able to do that tonight. So I wanted to ask, Sam, did you have anything that you wanted to share on this?
Yeah, I was going to say, first off, actually, I think your idea about having some graphs of incidents, let's say, that could be considered nefarious or criminal in orientation from our police would be helpful. It would show us at least what the trend is. And I don't know if Officer Sorillo can provide that or not. I'm not aware that he's provided anything like that in the past to the full PCPB. But let me just make one comment. You know, I get the emails from next door. And I would have to say that the probably 40 to somewhere in the range of 40 to 60% of the emails concern something happening to somebody somewhere in our PCPB area, whether it's a car crash, somebody being assaulted, a woman, you know, molested, this type of thing. So I do think it's an issue. One of the things, you know, for long-range planning, would it be helpful for us to, for example, require with each approval some sort of not only off-street parking, but some kind of garage type parking so that there's, less opportunity for people to do things to park vehicles on the on the street. But, that's just some introductory thoughts I have. I don't know if anybody else would have interest or if this prompts anything from anybody else.
Well, I think Officer Cirillo could provide that information. I certainly think he could get it. You have to like next meeting, if you are contacting him now and bother him now, I think you might be able to get him at the next meeting with that information, because he just is busy and can't, doesn't book out, on short notice. I don't know if you guys do it, but I have this Crime Watch. It's a site from the city. You signed up for emails, and it's within like a 2-mile radius of my house, and you check what crimes you want reported, and they send me that information every day. So you can actually see that kind of stuff. It's stolen cars and assault and lasers at the airplanes and stuff like that. So there is a site. I don't know if I have any of those emails right now, but so you can kind of see what's going on in your neighborhood. It doesn't graph it out. It doesn't give any conclusions. It's just like whenever enough, every few days they send an email with that. So
that's a good point, Cora. That's interesting. I didn't know they had that information online you can get like that.
Yeah, I'll look for that website next time I get one of those, and I'll share it with you guys. You just go there, and I think it's Crime Watch or something. I'll research it and get it to you guys a little bit later, but
that'd be great, because I wasn't aware of that either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, as you know, Sandag comes out with the crime reports, I think twice a year, but they break it out during cities. I don't know if maybe you can look in the appendix, and they may have it by district or sub areas. But they always have I think twice a year they print out to do a report on crime. So that's another resource that we can look into. And
that's a really good one to bring up. I had found, and I just shared links in the chat in case y'all haven't noticed. There's this year Sandag released one that's basically a perspective looking at 42 years of these statistics in the county.
There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, like you say, Javier, it's not quite granular enough for what we would discuss as it relates to the Peninsula community. The city webpage that I shared there has a link to perhaps the same information that Corlo was just talking about. One of the links they provide is to a map, and you can see, and they have different, kind of icons for what different types of crime have been committed in different areas. And you can also break out from the city web page. You can get data by neighborhood, such as like we can focus in on La Playa or Point Loma Heights or Sunset Cliffs, these different kind of sub neighborhoods within our community. But from the city portal, I couldn't find anything that would let us look at how these rates may have changed over time. And I think that's something that would be pertinent to the discussion. I was able to find it through this ArcGIS, that link that I also sent, but that one, it's not like in a good kind of visualization portal. You can pull it up by neighborhood and then just look at, kind of quarter by quarter over time from 2007 up through whatever the most recent reporting period was. And so those are the ones that I'd hope, with just a little bit of time, if we want to kind of kick this into our next meeting, we can, kind of circle this around to discuss more in depth. Some of the reason I included this tonight from what Sam was suggesting was that if we're discussing things like budget priorities that we want to request of the city, this could be relevant to that conversation. And I think it could be, but I think it might also be best if we can wait to get more of this information from our police liaison, and also just from whatever we can assemble ourselves, if this is our homework for the next month or so, to see what we can bring to the next conversation. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah, and also, I don't know if that's the website you're referring to, Matt, but you can go on and find out there's a map that shows where all of the sex offenders and all of those guys are, and they're all clustered around schools and libraries and parks and stuff. So I don't know if that's what you were referring to, but that map is also available
Oh,
online somewhere. I just sent an email to everybody with that crimemapping.com. And so you go on that, sign up, they send you those emails. You can see what I got on whatever date that was on the whenever.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that, Corla. And I'll make sure to also circulate these web links that I put in the chat here. So folk can get them later if they haven't happened to save them during this meeting.
But certainly, I don't think anybody should be trying to go through 40 years of data and try to break it down, Matt. I mean, your brain might work that way, but I don't think you're doing that. It's way too much.
Well, I'm not necessarily interested in that level of historic, but at least over like if we can look at things over the last decade, I think that could inform, you know, if we want to include this in part of our, you know, budget requests or budget discussions with our district council office, I think that could be informative.
Yeah, I agree on that for help with allocation of financial resources for the safety of the neighborhood. And I also think actually what I would like to do is see if we could, through whatever information we can develop, if we can actually find some things we should maybe refine as planning tools for approval of projects or things of this nature. That's where I see the big help.
Yeah, that makes sense, Sam. And I think that's a good way to, you know, kind of bring it back into focus if our, you know, if our purpose is around land use kinds of decisions and recommendations. So I appreciate the attention to that detail. Okay, so yeah, was kind of switching.
I move that we table it then to try so we can see what information we can get from our officers, Cirillo, and any other information we can get out of the city so that we can contact. And by the way, Matt, if you actually let me know when you copy officer, or you email Officer Cirillo again, I'd be happy to follow up also to say that, you know, here's another member of the committee and we feel this is important. So if I can do anything in that regard, I'd be happy to help.
Well, also we might contact, I know Manuel Reyes is our new D2 rep, but it might not be a bad idea to shoot an email out to him. If do you have his contact info or? Yeah, and shoot it.
Okay.
You know, I always include Dr. Jen as well as, you know, him, but maybe they have some statistics or something, because that certainly would be something that I think they should have too. So.
Okay, yeah, those are all great ideas. And Sam, I don't think we need to make a formal motion to table, as I put this as just an information item for tonight. And yeah, I kind of switched the order around on the agenda for not knowing how much information we had. I was going to put it second, but figured it would just be best to kind of bring up now, given that we weren't able to collect some of this data. And so with that, I'd like to move on to our action item, which was discussion of the Peninsula, or trying to rather create a list, if not an actual letter, to bring before the full board for what might be our CIP and other related budget priorities. Just for a little background, the city, you know, solicited budget request memos from the different districts earlier than normal this cycle. So right now we're discussing things that would be for fiscal year 2024. You know, we already have the budget allocated for fiscal year 23. So now we're talking about what would go into planning for 24. If I'm not mistaken, normally this would have been a conversation for kind of like late winter, early spring, but the city has accelerated it this year such that they put out the initial call in fall, and at the several weeks ago, our city council members submitted the initial memo request. So in the agenda, I had provided a link to that letter. And then I also provided a link to the capital improvement project portal. And that's what I had used to kind of identify for transportation and traffic subcommittee, any outstanding projects that were partially funded that we might want to request, get elevated priority to ensure they receive full funding. So with that, I guess I wanted to step back and kind of open it up. If there's anyone here who's had a chance to look at these, if someone has priorities that they would like to see, whether it's already included in these or not, this is a good time for that. Paul, you had your hand up?
Yeah, first of all, I looked at both these links, and thanks for sending them out. And
Sure.
I mean, I'm just flabbergasted at how much money it costs to do some of these projects.
Yeah.
My gosh, I mean, millions of dollars for something or other. I've got some of them in front of me here. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. Like the thing on Olean, the street where we were going to put that thing at Kumos Park, that's almost $500,000 for putting a little hump in, and probably some other things. The one that really got me was there's a $970,000 project. It talks about signal communications from Electron Drive down to Canyon to Talbot down to Rosecrans. As far as I know, that's 4 signals. And I don't know what they're doing about communications or why communications is necessary, but that seems like a lot of money for who knows what.
Is that part of, Paul, that could be part of that smart light business to keep traffic moving and stuff.
I wonder if we really, the only place that I think we need that is down at Talbot and Rosecrans, to be honest with you. All the other ones are run fairly independent because they're so far apart. I mean, Electron Drive is a long way away from Canyon, and most of those signals, I mean, I live right in that area, and I never had any problems. The Canyon and Talbot has a very good system of, I guess, seeing where people are and switching on and off very quickly. And there's some real delays if you're going down Talbot trying to get across Rosecrans, but I really don't know what that amount of money is for.
How much was it again?
$970,000.
For that
And
one.
it says for communications. And I saw they have Rob Field, they have a kids park that's $5 million. Toilets, $2 million. Basketball courts at Mission Beach, or Mission, over by that Welcome Center, $3.7 million to redo the basketball courts, which I've been by there and I don't see very many people play on them every once in a while. $700,000 for a beacon at Kettner and Palm. And I noticed that there's very few underground utilities on the list here for our district. There's a lot more for Claremont and other areas. There's only like about 4 of them that are in process. The only one that finished was down on Sunset Cliffs between something like Coronado and Niagara, and apparently that's completed at this point. I really noted when I looked through here that there just seems to be a lot more money and projects being done in Claremont than there are in the peninsula. And I'm not sure if that has something to do with our rep or what. Maybe that's why our rep isn't here very often, because she's over somewhere else working for people there. There's street requests for resurfacing in this area. There were some that I mentioned. Bernard Street's on the list. Valletta, which I didn't mention, is on, and there's one other one. I think those are the only ones on the list. And when you look at her budget letter, it appears that there's virtually no money listed on these budget letters. It just looks like a long laundry list of possible things, and who knows how many will be done. And the only ones that have money on it are social programs having to do with the homeless, and very little infrastructure except lifeguard towers, which, of course we need those. And we need, I guess, bathrooms at some places and things like that. So I'm just kind of surprised at what I saw.
Sorry, just one thing I wanted to point out. If I'm not mistaken, I think at this stage, this kind of like budget request It's going to the city the city office. I don't know exactly which office it is. Perhaps Javier does.
Well, it goes to the audit, the budget, independent budget analyst. There it is.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's the office that might come up with some actual numbers, like figures for how much some of these might cost. Is that how the process works?
Oh, they have a CIP planning department that crunches most of the infrastructure projects. I don't know who does the workforce. Probably the independent budget analysis does the workforce type analysis.
Brad? Oh, Brad, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at this list and I've seen some capital improvement project lists in the past that had different items. I mean, it seems as though, I mean, is there backlogs? I mean, I went through and I was looking at the preliminary engineering and design and all this. I mean, it used to be that, you know, we had 3 or 4 roundabouts on here and now there's nothing. So, I mean, do these accrue? I mean, you guys sounds like you know a lot more about how these things are done than I. Certainly, Javier seems like he has some experience with this, but yeah, I'm just kind of surprised because these lists we always are talking about what we want to do and whether it's capital improvement or something for this year's budget. I don't know, just seems like nothing really ever gets done that we asked for.
I sent that email around with the CPC report that has that information, and they told us at CPC that the Peninsula, or I looked at the list, and Peninsula doesn't have anything on the list. There's a 4.2 or $4.3 billion shortfall. That's what they said at CPC. And so the reason Claremont has all this stuff going, you guys attend CPC meetings, Russ Connolly, who was their previous chair, I don't think he's chair anymore, but he's still real active. And I want to be nice. That's their reason. He's I think so squeaky he gets a lot of grease. How about that? So that's why I think Claremont is it, and they're just on it and on it and on it. Those guys, that's just what they do. So that's my take on why Claremont is got all of that. So, and then I also said in that email, I just sent it to you, Paul, that the mayor's also rating the CIP funds to pay for Ash Street. So, yeah.
Well, Matt, I really appreciate you digging up this memo, and going through it, I was actually surprised some of the stuff that we've talked about is on here, which is good. You know, I noticed there's some Brad, the Nimitz and Evergreen calming measures, but I think that's one that you were recommending, or the board was recommending a roundabout. Wasn't that one, Brad?
Well, that was supposedly when I spoke with the city traffic engineer, 2 years ago. I mean, that was the one that was supposedly farther along. It was just behind the one down at Robb Field in terms of actually it was in a planning process. I don't know, it was potentially, that was the first one 106 was going to get. And now it's just like, it's disappeared. You know, of course, we have the ones that are farther down on the other side of Talbot, the one on Bessemer, the one on Owen. Whether or not those are going to happen, I don't know. But I mean, it just seems as though everything that we ask for, all these letters that we generate, I don't know, they just disappear into the ether.
So is there a sort of a master list?
That's the thing. There doesn't appear as though there is, and I've brought this up in the past.
I got the impression from the CPC meeting that this should be submitted each and every year, even though we've submitted it, that it should be like redone each and every year. So maybe, I don't know, that's just the impression I got. It sounded like that's what other people were doing. That doesn't make sense to me, but it seems to me like that is what's happening now. And
then everything just drops off the list, and so then it's like, well, it doesn't make that this year, but what about the last 5 years that we've asked for stuff and all those things are just gone now? And we're thinking, oh, they're in a, they're in a hierarchy and eventually they'll work their way to the top.
Well, I was
Anyway.
also kind of referring to our group. Do we have a master list that says, the date that was the letter and the request?
Well, we've got the list of all of the things that we've approved, all the letters that the board has voted on, and you go back through.
Is that the one? Is that the one on the website?
Yeah, I mean, but it's
Every
only,
letter's on the website, but it's not collated into that,
That's a
category.
good job for the intern.
He's on the environmental committee.
Yeah, well, you can borrow.
right.
I think that's a very good point, Javier, and I think that was also one of the hopes of what we could accomplish. When I've attended some of the Ocean Beach planning meetings, they have a list that they've maintained for each year. They kind of like submit, I think what maybe like Corla was just saying. They basically keep this list and they might shuffle around some items on it. But it's kind of like every year for budget request time, they have their like maybe top 6 CIP
Right.
projects that they want to see. And so I think back to kind of like what Brad and maybe Paul were pointing out is that like we don't have a lot on the list right now when you look at the budget memo, and we've requested a lot of things, but perhaps more piecemeal in the past. Like I think we've been really good, particularly from what I've seen on the transportation committee, both with Brad and now Mandy chairing it. Like, we're pretty good about identifying and addressing, taking action by writing letters. And then the follow through or the follow up, I think they kind of just get more lost in the ether, so to speak. And so this might be something that we can take on if we can, kind of come up with this list. And so I see kind of two directions for how we come up with this list. We can either kind of just come up with one right now of like, okay, these are what we think might be some priorities, or we can perhaps take a little more time, go back. It'd be great if we had the proverbial intern for this to go back and find, okay, here are the things we've done in the past. And here's how we would want to rank them now as we're trying to put it forward.
Well, there's also the issue with, these capital improvement projects seem like they're the big ticket items, right? And then there's also the little ones that are like $10,000, which are more of a budgetary thing and that really don't end up being on that list. And I don't know if we treat them separately, but I mean, I've had conversations with the senior traffic engineer and been told, okay, first your item was approved and unfunded, and then how do you get it unfunded? And then finally it's approved and funded, but now it's been still approved, funded, and it still hasn't been completed 2 years later. So it's sort of like this $4 billion shortfall. I think that maybe things would be different, and also the people to actually do the job. If you only have 3 electricians, it's hard to get lights. And
That point was brought up about the street lights and stuff, how they don't have any electricians.
they don't have anybody. That's what I was told.
That's
They
it.
don't.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
imagine.
they're just doing maintenance. They can't do anything.
Look how backed up DSD is. Joe tells us that they put in for their projects, it's 6 months before they even get appointments. It's everything's, I mean, that's not an excuse, everything just backed up. And so it's bound to affect budget and stuff too.
But I think that the idea of going back historically, and I mean, it seems like, wouldn't that be the way to go? Is just like all the things that we collectively can sort of remember that have just not been addressed. Should we just start from there and move forward? Or, I mean, what's your thoughts? Or should we conversely, as Matt just mentioned, do we just do the things that are important now and then do that later? I don't know.
Yeah, as Matt's indicated, we're a little behind the process because the city did start early. They normally start in the October timeframe, but this year they started early. And yeah, I'm a little torn. One, we do want to be proactive and address this memo and possibly provide some input to it for this year's budget. but in the big picture, we definitely need to get that history together and that collective list of, and then prioritize our priorities for next year. And
Well,
be
we haven't missed out on anything yet. They said that what they said at CPC was that they're reaching out, they will reach out in May. And so they advise that we start now with our CIP request so we don't miss any deadlines. So I think we are not too late to be on that next list. And then that survey, they do that survey thing where they did that survey last year. They do that every 2 years. So if somebody's willing, can take that on and give input on that survey, that helps as well. But
Which survey? Sorry, Paul. Which survey, Corla?
there was some survey they did last year. I can't remember exactly, but it where they got all this information about who wants what and this and that. And so they said they do whatever that survey is and they'll send it out. I don't know if Fred gets it or if I can pick it up out of CPC, but they won't do that again until next year because they did it in 21. So when that comes up, I think with this committee that we have now, we can get involved in that.
Okay. I like the sound of that. And Paul, you've wanted to comment.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, Margaret started a list on traffic committee, and we have a lot of priorities on there that we can start with as far as things on that end of the peninsula or the traffic issues. I'm kind of wondering where the things that ended up on this budget recommendation came from, because some of them, they may have been listening in or whatever. Some like the Nimitz Evergreen thing was tabled last month, and it was just an info item, and that's on the list. They also picked up on the sports arena or West Point Loma bike situation where Midway crosses, starting where the new bike lanes start. And they picked up on Oleander. And I had mentioned to a couple people Bernard Street, which is on that list for resurfacing. So I'm not quite sure where they're getting it or if they're waiting for official things, because a few of those things were not officially run through our group. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but
Well, I can comment on at least a couple of those. So the West Point Loma and Midway Sports Arena intersection, I'd been in contact with, I guess it was Linus, when I first had this problem. He was the one who suggested I submit this service request to the city. And so I've been trying to keep it on, Dr. Campbell's radar then, with the hope that we could bring it through the planning board to elevate it, that much higher. But it looks like, at least those efforts for now, have been heard by the office in the inclusion on the memo. And I know with the example of like Nimitz and Evergreen, Nicole had been kind of lobbying with that through some of the bicycle advocacy efforts as well. So some of these, we had discussed it and, maybe not taking it up quite timely enough or full supported enough as the PCPB to put it forward. But there's these other groups with, intersecting interests of ours that can also, try to advocate for these. Yes, Brad.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering about the Nimitz and Evergreen, if that's just sort of a coincidental sort of circumstance, because that intersection's been brought up numerous times. And frankly, with what the city has planned, I think that trying to turn that into a slow street or whatever, what we were talking about last month, seems a little bit unlikely, because it seems as though that Evergreen offshoot off of there is kind of pretty important in terms of circulation patterns. So anyway, again, I just think that was just a coincidence, and we need to know more about really what they were addressing there.
Yeah, I think they were referring to the intersection rather than Evergreen Street. So just the
Right, I think so too.
Yeah.
And if this is a way to try to, renew conversation about the roundabout that, you were talking about moments ago, Brad, I hope it can lead to, kind of a resurrection of that. And we can see or use this kind of as a springboard to ask, what did happen if this was a CIP project and there was funding for design, what happened? Because yeah, it's not on that portal now.
I'm wondering, in my experience in trying to figure some of this stuff out, and just directly calling, senior traffic engineers, I've gotten so much information by just talking to people that are working at the city that are kind of high up that you've sort of developed relationships with, and really pretty illuminating. So, I suppose I could find out. I mean, if we had some questions about things, I mean, I don't want to step on anybody's toes in traffic, but I mean, I'm just curious as to what happened to these projects that I've discussed in the past, and now they're just moribund.
As far as roundabouts, I did find one roundabout in this District 2 thing, and it's talking about
Yeah.
Crown Point Drive roundabouts, where
Right.
they want to do, I guess, a whole list of them for $3.5 million. So that was the only one that I found. None in our area.
Right. Well, they've been on there in the past, but they just, I mean, when Miller was the D2 rep, it was on the CIP list, but that was 2-3 years ago. And now, again, they don't continue, which they should, but don't.
So Matt, I went online to take a look at their schedule for, I found the last year's budget schedule. So they start deliberations, council in April. And from, I think what I heard from Jan, council member Campbell, was that she would need everything by January. I think they were gonna update this memo for January, if I heard correctly. So I'm just throwing that out to maybe help us decide on which way to proceed.
Well, maybe that's a problem, because they told us in CPC that they were wanting our request by May, but if it has to go through city council first and then they have a different deadline, then that's sort of conflicting information. So thank you, Javier.
Oh, well, I wonder if CPC deliberates on or has a.
No, the city made a presentation. It was the city guy that was talking about that. So it came directly from that budget guy. I forgot what his name was.
Are we talking about the same thing here though? Because what Javier was just talking about is the budget memo, which I think encompasses not just.
Not CIP.
Right.
Okay.
Right,
You're talking more specifically about CIP? Is that?
Yeah.
The little
Yeah,
stuff.
that's right. Okay. I'm on board now. I got it.
Yeah, the little stuff. So should we follow up with Jen Campbell's office then to find out, is that, now who did you hear that from? I'm sorry, Javier.
Oh, when Jan was at our meeting, we talked a bit about the CIP, and she told us, well, get your stuff to me, and that they were going to revisit, I believe, in January. There was still an opportunity if we got stuff to her by January.
How about the budget request memo thing? I mean, is that what Carl was talking about a few months down?
Well, the CIP, their budget includes the CIP. It includes everything. So the one volume of their budget is CIP. The other volume of a budget is their workforce. So, but it all goes to council at once as one budget. Okay. And they start, because they have to approve it. Their calendar year starts July 1st. So they have to have their CIP approved and their budget approved by July 1st. And so they start deliberating, from what I saw from 2020 in April. So they need to get everything by January usually to print their information and start getting it in front of the public and in the council.
Are there historic documents that have to do with what was approved in years past? So
every year you can look up, they'll have a approved budget.
I'm just wondering how many things have just dropped by the wayside that are in those budgets. Lots.
I think
they just didn't get done.
Yeah, they keep carrying over. And I think you can
They-
see that from that webpage where they have the
Oh, the
preliminary.
engineering and all that stuff, yeah.
Yes, so it, in their
I
budget.
didn't see any of that stuff on there, though. I went through it all and I looking for stuff like Paul was saying. And it just seems like we don't have anything. Well, we
Well,
do, but-
yeah, there wasn't, I looked through it too, and there was only maybe a handful of projects for Point Loma in District 2. And as
Right.
Paul mentioned, a majority of them were for the Claremont area, it seemed like.
right, PB, yeah,
Yeah.
very confusing.
So if we're kind of working backwards from this timeline of needing things in January, and full board is usually dark in December, does that leave us needing to try to come up with something tonight to push before full board this month, or would we still be able to take this up in January? Do you have a sense for that?
Yeah, that's a tough question. Yeah, it's kind of right on the cusp. One, I like to say we do, but two, I don't want to say we do if we don't. So.
Yeah. Is it
Well, I mean,
January
it-
1st or January 30th?
Right,
Yeah.
right. And is that January date hard and fast too? Because I mean, that seems like such a short period of time. And we do move rather glacially, as you know.
Well, fiscal year for sure is July 1st to June 30th. So that all does make sense. So, and on that timeline anyway, so.
So
Are we
yeah,
really prepared to do this all tonight?
Yeah, I don't know if we, well, Matt, I'm gonna, there was two alternatives, I think. One was to go through the memo and comment on the memo and maybe add some stuff, tweak it, and get that to the board. I think we have time to do that. And we can also meet one more time, I think, couldn't we? Before?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, we don't necessarily need to be dark. Maybe the full board does, but
Well,
least-
I think you can meet.
even before the next meeting.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
we have a week, I think, to meet one more
Right.
time, so. Or the other option is to try to get the big CIP list, and I don't know if we have time for that, though.
Right.
well, I think in some ways, if we're talking CIP list, like that doesn't need to be that many different items, right? Like, because there's realistically not going to be money for a lot of CIP projects. And if we, kind of take a lead from what I saw Ocean Beach do, and we just have our top 6 or maybe even less than that, I think that's a manageable thing. If we're hard pressed, we could come up with a list of 6 projects tonight, I'm sure, between the 6 of us assembled here. Whether that's actually the best use of our time, and I mean, it's not the most rigorous way to go about this, but if we need to have something, we could do that.
Right.
Just as an idea. Like one of the CIP projects that's partially funded, that we had taken up as a board and actually got the letter through for the crosswalk on Chatsworth at Plimosa Park. Like that one's already in the list. So we already have one item that would be on, our internal list that's on the budget memo. We want to kind of list our CIP projects. There's one that's already kind of in motion.
Right, and there was the other one. I know there was a big push on streetlights, and they did have the streetlights listed. I don't know if those are exactly the ones, but they do have Goldsmith and Lotus and Evergreen Street and Lotus listed.
Those are historic up there, aren't they?
Yeah, those are the historic ones. Yeah.
And Brad, when you were talking about Rob Field, is that roundabout over in OB that they gave the Onion Award to or something? There was some big
Yeah.
thing about
um,
that. Is that
I
the
don't
one you're
know.
talking about? or-
Frankly, I like it, but
Well, I haven't been over there
I've
to
gotten
see it.
stuck behind that, in that line at that stop sign before, so I like it now.
I do too. I think it's terrific.
I don't know, they're all writing it up, talking about how they deserved the Onion Award, but I haven't, like I said, I haven't been over there, so I don't know.
No, I don't know. It's an improvement. Anytime you don't have to stop, I'm happy.
Yeah, well.
Even
I-
if you have to go
it's better
slow.
For the environment. And so do you think the other
Right, good
roundabout
point.
that Brad was talking about should be on this list? Since it had gotten far along? Should that be one of the top ones, maybe?
I heard it was already, but anyway, go ahead, somebody else.
Yeah, but if it's not on the list or if it's funded, like, I don't know, I don't know what you guys think about that. If it's possibly dropped off. Or-
This is the Nimitz and Evergreen. Is that what we're?
Right, that's the
Yeah.
one that's the one I remember them talking about, was farther along than anything else, but I don't know its current status, that
Well-
was back when I was chair of the traffic, when I was talking to, and I don't know that I want to necessarily go behind anybody's back to call up the people I talked to in the past.
But I think to Corla's point, we could, because it says here, traffic control says traffic calming measures at Nimitz and Evergreen. Our comment could be funding for consideration of the roundabout or something like that, where we just add to what's on this memo.
Mhm.
Because Brad, it could be funded into the design and it may not be funded for construction.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the design thing. I'm looking at
I
the.
didn't see it in the District 2 either, as
Oh, God.
Well,
Well, another thing is, since I had that conversation, they did change the configuration in that, where it's sort of like they sort of went halfway to a roundabout, in that they made that little curve there as you're going down Nimitz that sort of bumps it out to slow down, traffic calming sort of a thing. They turn coming north, they turn the 2 lanes into 1 lane. It seems as though it's tweaked from how it was when I last spoke with them. So I don't know if that's a preliminary thing to get people adjusted, or they did it this way because they didn't have the money for that $1 million per every roundabout kind of a number, which is probably more than that now. So I don't know if something's changed, or if that really still is on a list as a roundabout, which we have called out in the
I
past.
believe that change they made was kind of to protect that home with that bulb out,
Right.
so cars would not go straight. I
Right.
don't know if they're considering a roundabout. I would think that a roundabout would have a lot of concerns there because of the speed of traffic, and there's a number of movements there that have visual problems where you wouldn't be able to see traffic coming the other way.
Maybe
There's kind of
that's
a hill
why
when you're on Nimitz, to where people coming down Lowell Street would have a hard time seeing traffic coming. And also, there's just such a high volume of traffic going around and through that there's not, I mean, it would have to be a single lane, I would think. So you're not looking at something like over in France.
Right.
It would severely, I think, slow the traffic down and maybe make some problems.
Well,
Well, maybe that's why
especially
it is
visually.
the way it is now.
But as I think Brad was just talking about, in terms of Nimitz is being condensed down into 1 lane in both directions on approach to that intersection. Whether that was intentional in terms of preparing for a move like this down the road, it does seem like, some of the traffic, Paul's mentioning it's not going to be like a multi-lane roundabout. I think it's already, like, the initial conditions are set up such that you could put one in there, and it's not going to like force a merge right at the intersection, from a 4-lane road down into 2 just as it enters the roundabout. So in that regard, I think it's kind of well situated to become one. There might be some other concerns there, but I think it could solve multiple problems at once, in terms of like safety of that house. Also, just make it safe. Like it's a difficult intersection to try to traverse on a bike as it is right now.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's part of my daily commute.
Oh, so yeah, no,
Yeah.
I recall now when I've been on that, I've had to cross the street like an L shape because you can't get across the street direct. So
Well,
Yeah,
Paul and I have talked about that whole Nimitz section all the way down, because the way they have that at Rosecrans, they did put in that left turn lane, but that backs up and blocks traffic all the way through. Something needs to be addressed in that whole corridor from like Lowell to Rosecrans. You know, that whole thing is just wrong. And when
This
you're trying to come out there at Ralph's on Locust to turn on Nimitz, I reported that you can't see beyond those palm trees there. You got to be out in there. And the city told me there's nothing wrong with that. I've just been in a project review meeting, and they're talking about the visibility corridor and the triangles and all that stuff. I'm like, hey, this looks like that problem. And no, not to the city. That's perfectly fine. You can't see there.
Well, I have
Yeah,
numerous pictures because I went down to that intersection and sat there for a couple of times for like 30 to 40 minutes.
yeah.
And the backups in that left turn lane are at 8 o'clock in the morning, and in the afternoon, at 3 in the afternoon, it backs up past the turn pocket. And of course, they road dieted down to one lane. So all the cars coming down the street have to go over the buffer lane that's in there. I believe that the road diet should stop about a half a block. It's fine to do the one lane as you come through, because there's one lane coming from Lowell and there's one lane coming from Nimitz. There's no need to have two lanes right at the curve, but it has to flare out at some point, and it has to protect those people making a left, because the people at Lowell, as you say, they're trying to make a left and they have to go straight across two lanes, and then they can't get in. So they have to wait. They back up on Lowell all the way to Keats, waiting to make that left turn. And I believe that they can change that intersection to where they would have the middle lane would be a choice left turn lane. And that would, I think, solve the problem. You'd have to break the cycle so east and westbound Nimitz would have its own signal. It's kind of like over at Midway and Sports Arena Boulevard, where all four of them have their own cycle, or
Right.
whatever you call it. And I believe that would work much better. It would allow people from Lowell to turn into the second lane and then make a left turn. And the volumes are not that much greater going straight than they are going left there. That's one issue. The other issue is the immediate road diet after the left turn coming off Rosecrans is totally ridiculous. You have people backing, slowing down, and trying to merge before they even get to the gas station, the way it's set up. They could move that road diet down a half a block and let people merge at a better spot. Wouldn't really affect the bikes. When you're making a left turn there should not be a bike in that bike lane, because the through traffic doesn't have a green at that time. And I doubt somebody's making a right off of Rosecrans. You never know if someone would, but they would see that there's traffic coming at them. So there are solutions that can be made, and it's just a question of who to talk to. Brad, I'd love to find out who I could talk to about it. If we don't go through this group, I'm happy to take it on myself. As far as it being related to the evergreen, it's related, but it's not definitely tied to it. It could be done independently. I just think that, I don't know if there's someone who can look at a roundabout, some analysis to see if one will actually work, because I believe that one, if you're talking about that one at Nimitz and Keats or Lowell, it would be probably pulled out after a while. I don't think it would work. There's too much traffic, especially in the morning coming down Nimitz trying to go left, and they'd be, having to merging with all the people off Lowell, and people coming up Nimitz having to go to Lowell. They'd be blocking the people coming down Nimitz. The traffic signals work better, I think, than a congested single lane roundabout, especially with a weird configuration.
I don't know if that's true or not, Paul. I mean, roundabouts, people don't stop. If you got a 3-minute stoplight, I mean, what's that place in Indiana where they took out all their traffic lights,
Right.
and they put in 197 roundabouts? And you're not going fast, but you never stop. Everybody just gets used to merging. I mean, look at La Jolla Boulevard. You used to have
La
to
Jolla
stop
works.
250 times, if you got a line of 50 cars, and now you just, you get through there and an eighth the amount of time. I don't know. I'm certainly no traffic engineer. and
It all depends on the
you do a lot
configuration.
more.
And if you have, on La Jolla Boulevard, there's very little cross traffic. So it's just kind of a calming device for the through traffic. If you have a number of people going on Nimitz who want to continue on to Lowell in the morning, and you are going to have to stop. You're going to have to stop to wait for people to weave in. It's going to create a backup. When you stand and look at traffic coming down Nimitz from Chatsworth, it comes in a bunch. It's all backed up. It's 2 lanes of traffic merging into one. You get down there, there's it could be a whole block lined up waiting for the light. Well, if you have a traffic circle that's going to allow you to move all the time, if you're going at 8 miles an hour, it's still going to have a backup. And
Well,
if you have
so,
to weave people
there
in.
is a difference between a traffic circle and a roundabout too, right? You got the traffic circles that are bigger, that people travel a little higher rate of speed. Anyway, I don't know that we're gonna.
Yeah,
get
we don't
on
have to
this.
solve it. Yeah, and I know,
Yeah.
for instance, on Lowell, if you're coming down Lowell, it's not that much traffic. You could put a yield sign on that
I mean,
side.
that's what they all are, right? They're all
Yeah,
yields,
yield.
right? Everybody yields.
Yeah. So, and anyways, it's 7:30. We've been at it for an hour, so I'm gonna
Good
go back
point.
to our chair and see where we're going.
So yeah, this kind of came off the question of, if we want to assemble kind of a priorities, perhaps starting with CIPs, do we want to include this project that has been discussed and I guess requested by the board in the past, and seems to have fallen off the city's radar. And so then that kind of spun out into this, which is, I'm chuckling because, it's like Corla brings up Rosecrans problems. This is a perpetual discussion we have in the Transportation Committee. And I know Paul can comment on that too, because we always kind of talk about it. And then when it comes to trying to find a solution, we usually kick it down the road because it's a hard one. And so, yeah, we can't solve that tonight, but I think we could, just very quickly, see if we can come to consensus. Do we think it makes sense to include this as a priority, whether we're requesting a roundabout or whether we're just requesting some kind of treatment?
Yeah, I agree, because I think what we've got to do is to take areas like this and actually list them and just say that it should be an action item to be considered. And I don't know if that means we get a traffic consultant to help us on it, or we just list it as an item for council. I'm sorry, for District 2. So I would be in favor of just listing it now and say that there are alternatives.
Well, how is this? Because we had that discussion again with the thing with Nicole and turning that into, this is going to be a little bit counter to what she's proposed, right? And
Well, if
is
I
that
could
going to get
comment,
it? Please.
from what I understand, from what I understand from Nicole's thinking, is that if there's a long-term plan for something like a roundabout or some other kind of traffic flow control there, what she's proposing in terms of diverters at Evergreen to make it so that cars wouldn't go straight through there, but cyclists and pedestrians would be able to more easily cross. I think that's just a kind of short-term stopgap, is like, hey, this is an easy thing to put in. It's also easy to remove later if there's a more robust solution, a more holistic solution for the intersection.
Well, as someone already mentioned in this most recent discussion, that we're not traffic engineers, and my stance is always to refer to the traffic engineers and ask for review and ask for the money to do something, just at least ask for the review and have the professional people that are trained to do that look at it. That is my opinion.
Yes, and I concur with that.
Okay.
Well, so this would be on the list then. What
Yes.
else?
So yeah, we have the Chatsworth intersection in Plimosa, which is already partially funded. That's on our list. Nimitz and Evergreen. to be reviewed. And so these are both already in the budget memo, but we want to try to keep them on our priorities list.
Mhm.
Yeah, what else would people
Do you
want?
want to include those streetlights again? Did you say that at the beginning or, I mean, we know they're backlog, but again, we don't want them to forget about that and have them drop off and have to cycle through again. So I don't know what you guys think about those, streetlights.
The streetlights that Paul brought up?
Yeah. Are they already funded? Are they going to be done?
Oh, the ones on Rosecrans or the?
No,
or
no,
the
no, up in,
Loma Portal.
Yeah.
Yeah, those
No.
are on the list. I would keep them if they're on the list. I think they're,
I think we need to just keep, even though we might have heard action, in my opinion, is keep them on the list year after
Right.
year until they're completed.
Mhm,
So that we don't drop
Right.
off. And all the projects that Brad said he's seen, they're just like nowhere.
mhm.
So, in limbo or something, so.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't, well, maybe this goes back to the big picture. I wouldn't drop anything that's on here unless we really feel strong about it. I would comment on an item or add to the memo.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think there's any reason for us to try to remove anything from our community that's made it to the memo.
Right. But
Paul, did I see your hand up a moment ago? Yeah, you're muted. Paul, can you unmute?
that we should include, at Nimitz, we should include the review of the arrangement they have in there now. I believe those reductions to one lane are premature, and that we could maybe ask them to review making the middle lane left turn for both directions, which would solve that backup problem, I believe, from what I've seen. It may be more of a system to some extent. I mean, if you're talking about a roundabout or up there, then I think, the intersection at Nimitz and Rosecrans is also involved.
Okay, so you're just so I understand, you're proposing that we also request review of Nimitz and Rosecrans?
Yes, as far as the left turns and the reduction in lanes so close to Rosecrans. I believe they don't have to be that close. They could be backed off and still do the same job they're doing now.
Is this a traffic, is traffic going to be questioning why we're
Well,
asking for something like this?
I mean, if we want to be proactive, transportation has they've rescheduled their meeting. It's not going to be next Tuesday because of the election. It's going to be the following week. So there's plenty of time if we have kind of a draft list from coming out of this committee meeting that we can kick it over to Mandy and say, hey, here's what we're considering. Would you want to take this up for discussion in your committee?
Paul, is Paul on that committee too? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
Paul and I both are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem like we're focused on more traffic things at the moment.
Right.
Oh, speaking of non-traffic things, was it Paul who mentioned earlier the kind of making utilities more robust by going underground? Yeah, I think that was Paul. You're muted again.
I haven't looked at the utility schedule at the moment, but I just see there was virtually nothing on those links that you sent over. And I don't know if some changes have been made, or I know it's slowed down considerably. At least I know when they originally proposed it, it was supposed to take X number of years, and it like doubled because they didn't do it as fast. I mean, my street, for example, was on the list 4 years ago, and they reallocated the list when a council member came into office. And I don't know if something like that has been done now or not. It would be good to review where things are and to see if they've been moved or pushed to another area, which would, not be too fair.
I think Paul's, I mean, the undergrounding program has had a lot of problems. SDG&E used to manage it, you probably know, and it's been
Right.
so frustrating slow. The city has taken it over, a good part of it, but it takes, they used to think 3 years. Now it takes like 5 or 6 years to do an undergrounding project. And they do have a priority list because it's so political. And I haven't seen that priority list in a while, but that could be something I think we should table and as part of the planning group, and maybe look at where the priorities are, and then maybe bring that up sometime during the middle of the year once we're more educated on the undergrounding program and what's being prioritized. Because yeah, I think we definitely need to make sure that Point Loma protects the view corridors and removes as much undergrounding above ground cables and things like that. So, but it's a huge program. It's, I think, planned out for the next 30 years. But I think that's something we should take up this year.
Yeah,
Okay.
'cause when they did my neighborhood Evergreen, which has the big, what do they call them, distribution lines, the great big, my house is done, but Evergreen is not. That's slated for 2034, which could have changed. And back then, it was $1 million a foot to do this undergrounding. So God knows what it is now. If our pocket park is over 2 million, like, who knows?
Oh, Pocket Park, is that something that we should
I-
also include on this list?
It's,
Well,
it's
It
on
is on
there.
the list.
It
It's
is.
on the list.
Yeah, yeah. Our comment should be to make sure it's fully funded for construction
I
this
thought,
year.
but didn't Don say that it was last month?
I think he did say that. Yeah.
Oh, I kind of think it should be on the list, even if it's redundant, if it's funded, they're just gonna check it off. But if it's something's happened again, I don't know.
Yeah, I would keep it on the list. Absolutely. Yes, that's a.
Is Voltaire Bridge have city involvement at all, or is that gonna be privately funded? Because they're making Joe jump through a bunch of hoops with, permits and blah, blah, blah stuff. So is that something that's a CIP, or is that? I don't know either. I don't know.
For example, on the undergrounding, I'm looking at the website right now, and they talk about how the leasing agreement is going to expire on June 1st, 2021. And I don't know where it goes from there. And at first I thought that I couldn't even click through, but I was able to click through and see the streets. Man, the zoom happens so fast. It's
Yeah,
hard
it's
to,
a mess, isn't it? I'm trying to do the same thing, Paul.
yeah, there's a map over here. If you went down to, and they have colors on these different groups, I guess. You could click on them, and I don't know what that means. I don't know if the color means, I think the colors are different districts of them. It'd be nice if the colors meant like what, where they were in the project. Now here's one down here on Cordova Street. Design was late 2018 to early 2020, and the construction is to start mid 2027. I mean, that's kind of depressing.
Well, my house years ago was 2032. So, and I was trying to check and see if I could get an update on it just now, but I'm having some issues like you were, Paul. Let me see if I can.
Well, my area, it says my project is allocated in 2022, and there's nothing else below it. So the one that's being done in 2027 down Sunset Cliffs, Cordova area, down the Ladera, it was allocated in 2016, and the construction is set for 27. So you're talking 11 years from allocation to construction. So, my area wouldn't be done until 2033, even though it was allocated last year.
Well, I just checked on mine. I'm unallocated now with no dates. So
Yeah.
Oh, darn. We're gonna.
When was the allocation? Does it say a date on the allocation?
no, unallocated,
Wow.
no date. So looks like that's not happening in my lifetime.
It's not funny. What do you
Yeah.
think about street sweep? We're,
It could be
we're-
tomorrow,
let's, yeah, I don't even want to think about that. But, you know,
knock on wood.
God, yeah, it like that. Paul and I have been talking
Yeah.
about that street sweeping, and even though those schedules, there's a big confusion, we're gonna maybe have that intern look into it. I think it should be posted in our neighborhood. I think that's a, you know, priority in the peninsula, anything that is close to any waterway. And I think that should be funded and should be done. You know, I mean, that's just my opinion. And I don't know if anybody's ever really discussed that, because you know, I just thought, well, okay, this is the way it is. But, you know, if nobody says anything, nothing will change. So
Well, what's interesting is that, you know, Dr. Jen, I think at the last meeting was talking about how they've done an analysis, I believe, and they're coming up with new programs. And you wonder, like, well, what kind of analysis would they have done that, you know, on a street like Warden, where there's no space ever to get to the curb, and it's not posted, or the area where you live, Corla, which is very busy with cars. So they must not have done very much. You know, as far as allocating it, what do they need? A new one of those, traffic meter maid kind of things to go by, and they're charging what, $68 a ticket, and that's going to go up. They just wanted to jack the price that up. So you'd think the program would pay for itself as far as the posting.
yeah, I would think that too. I mean, it has to be posted. They need to post it. And so isn't that not a CIP issue, or is that not big enough for CIP? Brad, what do you think?
Don't ask me. I'm pretty ignorant. I'm pretty ignorant about all this stuff. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
The way I was starting to kind of segregate it in the list that I'm typing up right now is, you know, proposed CIP priorities, which are more infrastructure. And then
Right.
I just created a new column for this as programs to fund, because it seems like
Okay.
more of like an ongoing program.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there would be, you know, new sign installation, but that could be part of an ongoing, just make sure this is,
The thing. Okay.
I don't know. And so right now, in terms of kind of like our list of CIP priorities, we're at 5 between Chatsworth and Plumosa, Nimitz and Evergreen, the Loma Portal lights, Nimitz and Rosecrans, and then Pocket Park.
Mhm.
Seems like
So-
a good list.
That's a solid list. You know, we could add 1 or 2 more if necessary, but if we're kind of like reaching the limit of that, we can either, you know, try to more formalize this into a letter now with the time we have remaining, or talk about some of these other programs to fund. Brad, you had a hand?
No, I was just agreeing with you that, yeah,
Okay.
5 sounds good. And it always seems with the city that short and sweet, and because if you get those 1.5-page letters, they're not going to get read. You know, you just got to be, let them skim it, paragraph or 2, and they're done. And it just seems like more effective. So better to ask for less than more right now, I would think.
Hit and run.
The main priorities. I don't know what everybody else thinks.
I agree.
Well, I was thinking, I really like it's not, I don't think it's something that since I've been on the board, we've discussed, but the Sunset Cliffs Natural Park and Linear section, where they continue funding for improvements to protect the natural park and linear sections along the shoreline, improve safety and erosion. I think that's a great program.
I tend to overlook that in my thinking, because that Sunset Cliffs Natural Park group is so active and so powerful. But I think that's a really great idea. You know, everybody's still complaining about it all over next door about how bad everything is over there. And so, you know, I'm on board with that. If the rest of you.
I have a question to ask. Is that plus all these other parks down in Robb Field and all that, are they considered part of the district, or are they considered a citywide allocation would come out of a different pot? Because we have a lot of parks, these large citywide parks in the district. Should that not get money from other districts, because those people are coming over to play football and whatever it is, soccer, and use those parks, including the beaches.
Is
You know,
Sunset
they don't need lifeguard stuff in North Park. So are they taking our money away to put something in that other people use?
Well, they're taking all our money away. It goes to disadvantaged neighborhoods now anyway, so it doesn't matter. I'm not that cynical, but yes, I am.
Well, I don't think it's a bad idea if we want to include this on the list of priorities we want to see elevated, whether it comes from exactly like, you know, D2 kind of specific allocated funds or a greater city. In my mind, I don't think that's as important of a distinction. You know, if it comes down later is like, well, we only have X amount of money, how would we want to see it allocated? Then I think it might be a slightly different conversation. But at this stage, if we're just trying to put forth, you know, here's the things that we want to see come out in our district. I think the Sunset Cliffs kind of linear attention to the linear improvements would be good.
Yeah, looking through the memo also, they talked about traffic signal optimization, and I know Paul talked a little bit about this, but I think continuing to optimize Rosecrans is huge and is important. Getting up and
Well,
down.
A huge portion of that has been done. The smart lights at least went back. When was that, Corla? Was that
I don't know. I think,
Conrad's days, right?
Mm.
Because
yeah,
I mean, I drive my dad to the doctor's office all the time, and he lives south of Talbot, and we got to go to the 5
Oh, yeah.
and 5 and 8 interchange. And I have made better time in that section of road than I ever have in my life. I hit one light
That's
from
amazing.
that
That's great.
whole length of Rose.
that's
Yeah,
how.
I mean,
most
they
work.
really work. They really work.
Okay.
So I'm
okay.
a real advocate for those to continue.
Yeah, I don't think
So,
there's a smart light at Talbot, though. I think it starts at Cannon.
Yeah, I think it just starts at Cannon.
I'm not
You're
sure
right.
how far down it goes, but that has made an improvement definitely in traffic there. So.
Well,
It
maybe
starts at
that
the
was what
freeway,
Paul
and I
was
think-
talking about.
Yeah, I think it goes all the way down to either Shelter Island Drive or at least Nimitz, but possibly down farther.
No, I think it goes a little further than that. It might be Harbor, but don't quote me.
It stopped at Harbor, and then they did the next section down the canyon, because the first section was from the freeway to Harbor Drive.
Yeah.
And then they added a few more lights down
Yeah.
to Canyon. I don't think Talbot's made it yet.
No, as far as I know, it didn't. It could have, but we've had such a turnover in D2 reps. It could have happened. And we just don't know about it. I don't think so.
Well, I don't know how the system is used at Talbot, but if you're coming down Talbot down the hill and trying to make a left or go straight, sometimes you're waiting for 3 minutes, and they just continue to let the traffic go on Rosecrans, and a lot of times there'll be no traffic coming for 15 seconds until a light opens up somewhere else. So I'm just not sure how that's set. And
I don't think it's
It's set
optimized.
that it prioritizes Rosecrans, not the cross streets.
Yeah.
That's the same with,
Canyon's terrible too.
yeah, I was just gonna say Canyon. You can
Canyon, and you
I'm out
You
on
could read a
Byron
book.
Street.
you
I
can
want-
can read
there.
a book at Canyon.
you can shave easily while you're waiting.
No problem, right?
I'll come down Talbot and make a left on next to the park, Evergreen, and then make a right on Canyon to go get to the light, so you don't get stuck so long,
Yeah. Yeah.
which it probably isn't the way it's designed to work.
All right. Well, I think we're on a roll. I think you got like six projects now, right?
Yeah, I think we have 6, and so I think that's a good number to try to type up. I guess in terms of action today, I'm trying to think how best to do this. Do we want to try to like more formally collectively write the letter right now to make sure we have the wording and then vote on that, and then maybe CC or send it over to Mandy to perhaps take up in transportation committee before full board meeting, because several of these are kind of in her committee's domain.
That's not a bad idea, just to get buy-in and make sure that by the time it gets to the board, it goes through smooth. So Matt, how are you thinking about structuring this memo? It would be that, you know, we've reviewed the memo dated September 30th from council, or did this go to Council Member Campbell, right? We've reviewed your memo, and these are our priorities, or these are something like that. It's just, or sort of like we concur with your memo. We just want to make a note. These are the board's top priorities.
Okay, I like where you're going. So one thing I was thinking to do is I just open up a new document. I might screen share this while I'm typing it. And then y'all can help flesh it out if that makes sense. So seeing this now, so you know, so addressed to D2. Basically, we've reviewed the 930. So I'm just kind of like outline sketching it now, and then it can be fleshed out later. But we've reviewed the 930 budget memo and support. You said something that I like the wording, Javier. Do you recall what it was?
Oh, now you got me on the spot. Here, we concur with your recommendations, and we recommend the priorities below, or something. I can't even remember what I said now. So
Some of those are already on the plan, so we're listing them again, which probably is not a bad idea.
well, I think we're just we don't want to delete anything. We want to add. Oh, I don't know. Are we adding any new ones, or are those all just on there and we're just prioritizing?
I think some of them are already on there.
Number 4 was Paul's is new.
Well,
Oh.
I don't think it matters if they're on there or not. We're putting in our priorities. And for example, if Sunset Cliffs is federal or something else, then they're going to come back and let us know that, because that's their business to do that.
Isn't Sunset Cliffs a linear park? Isn't that the formal name for it, or am I wrong?
Sunset Cliffs Natural Park,
I thought.
and there's
Well,
two
there's
sections.
also
linear
the
section.
natural park is at the end, but isn't the linear park the one that goes all the way along Sunset Cliffs till it hits
Linear section,
basically
that's
Point Loma
correct.
Avenue?
Yeah, so they call it Sunset Cliffs Natural Park and Linear Section. I guess that's the one that runs along.
Yeah,
I don't have the
no
memo
surf
you
and
guys
all
are
that.
looking at. Is there a subject line on the memo?
Yeah, Sunset Cliffs Natural Park and Linear Section.
Let's see. Let me.
It's on page 6.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, can you go up to the beginning though, like see what this is addressed to the top? Will you scroll to the top?
Environmental protection.
Yeah, so it's under the subheading for environmental protection.
Okay, count subject. Okay, let's subject ours with that same thing, fiscal year 24 budget recommendations, copy and paste that in. And then, yeah, perfect. Yeah. So that they know what we're referencing. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Priorities for the peninsula. And let's propose priorities for the peninsula. Yeah. Community planning area, peninsula community planning. How is that on our documents, Brad? It's peninsula community. Yeah, that looks good to me. Perfect. Yeah, just want to be sure they know who we are, because it seems like they forget. I'm serious. I feel like we're the little stepchildren or something of San Diego.
Do we want to mention that we're not we don't want to cancel anything that's already listed? And we
Well, I
agree?
think that's covered. We concur with the recommendation of the Peninsula. And then the point of this, we want to just highlight the priorities below.
Yeah.
And do we want to point out which includes, one or two? Is it just one new thing?
That Nimitz and Rosecrans, they finished some improvements just recently. And
Right.
so we'll have to go back and take a look at, I'll go back and look at they re-looked at that intersection in the Midway Community Plan update. And they talked about it, and I can't remember what they talked about, Nimitz and Rosecrans, because it was rated at E or some bad service level, some poor service level.
Well,
I think they're,
but we don't, the new state guidelines, we don't do things based on level of service anymore, right? It's now vehicle miles traveled, which is the.
See, yeah.
yeah, but it's still documented that the level of service is bad. So I just,
Okay, I'm not disputing that.
yeah, so I still like to use that because it's good documentation. Hey, your level of service is poor.
Okay.
And let's be sure and put in Cannon Street Pocket Park. So they know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking, because these are just my quick notes, I was going to try to
Oh,
find,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
copy and paste the actual.
Oh, good. Oh, perfect. Okay, that's perfect. Because if it's already in that memo as a highlighted thing, then I guess we want to follow through with that then, right? Traffic calming, yeah, copy and paste, yeah, perfect. All the bullet points.
Excellent.
Yeah, because that's how it's listed in the
Well-
memo, right? Or no?
Right, right.
It is, but did we, this comes back to our conversation earlier of, do we just want to talk in terms of traffic calming, or do we want to try to tie this into, some of the efforts Brad had discussed earlier related to the money that was supposedly invested in design, or at least a study of things like a traffic circle?
Well, for all we know, with when I talked to them in the past, it was prior to this new configuration being implemented. So I'm wondering if that got nixed somehow. So I guess the traffic calming seems pretty broad,
Right.
without necessarily pigeonholing us to talking about roundabouts again. I don't know.
You could-
and also with Paul's comment about he's not a big fan of them. So we could find that out. In the meantime, maybe I could make a call or two.
Okay, so I guess maybe for the moment, we leave it as it is in the budget memo, but this could also be
Right.
something that, if Paul, you can help remember to try to bring this up maybe for the Transportation Committee. If Mandy takes this up, I can send what we have at the end of the meeting tonight over to Mandy with the request that it gets added to their agenda. But okay, so there's that.
So you can add to that, elaborate, maybe say, provide construction funding. And provide, yeah.
I see you type HTE for the, like I do.
We all do.
I don't know why spell check doesn't auto correct that.
Okay, so
Yeah.
for the lights for Loma Portal, does anyone know?
Here we go.
What does it say there?
They have
They're
bulk.
listed separately like Ute and
There they are,
Alphabet.
the Bob Goldsmith, Locust,
Yeah, I think they're listed.
Evergreen, right.
And
Yeah.
Voltaire Street too.
It's-
Voltaire
Or,
is in there.
yeah, I don't know if that's OB, what part of Voltaire that is, but yeah.
Brad, where is it? Is you Alcott in that area, or Alcott's a little too high up?
Alcott's up by the high school.
Yeah, I don't know if that's an antique or an old light either, but
Well, why would Ute Street? I don't know a Ute.
I don't
Street.
know. Butte and, I mean, but Alcott, we have an Alcott.
Yeah, that Alcott's that short street there, it runs in from.
Maybe we don't have to be
Chatsworth to
specific.
Poinsettia.
We talk about the street, I don't know, street light or
I
something.
think Utes in
Street light
Claremont.
repairs. Just
Yeah,
street light
maybe there's
repairs.
another Alcott.
Yeah, I think we should just go with the heading street light repair.
I think that's good, let them figure that part out. That's
Yeah.
accurate.
Because they know, they got it back on, they're all aware of that, and everybody's complaining about that, so whatever they're trying to do to fix that.
Is there an old memo that highlights what streets are that was put together by the board that we can
I don't-
reference?
About streetlights?
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't remember ever talking about them. Does anybody else?
Yeah, I think we talked about them before, but just casually, I don't think there was anything,
No, I don't remember any letter. And what?
Oh, then that's interesting. How'd that get on her Campbell's radar then? Somebody,
Because people call.
oh, okay.
that
A
area
lot of these things are,
historic.
resident initiated. They bypass us and they get on the list.
Yeah. Depends on who you know too, so,
Exactly right. I was about ready to say that, Corlin.
yeah. Cannon Street Pocket Park, yeah. Perfect. Yeah, beautiful. That's exactly right.
Excellent job, Matt, by the way. Thank you for doing this so quickly.
Yes, it's great.
I was going, oh, we're gonna be here till 10.
And he's the copy and paste maniac there. He's good.
Yeah, he's doing great.
He's
Dude,
just got it, man.
Way too much computer work for my day job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not what I thought the glory of a scientist was, but such are the times. So yeah, I guess what do we want for this item? Because it wasn't on the list. You brought up the recent completion of Rosecrans. Do we want to talk more specifically about this being the intersection, the traffic flow onto Nimitz? Or
Well, do you want to add a Lowell Street, I mean, not Lowell, Evergreen in there, like that whole section? Or
well,
do
that's
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that's a question. Do we want to tie this into number 2, which is already Nimitz and Evergreen?
uh-huh. And also my other thought just now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is there a priority of any of these that you guys want to be number 1 that's more important to be number 2, or is it just okay like this? Is there anything that you guys think is most important that should be in the number 1 position?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, maybe we just delete the numbers. I think
Okay.
Or but bullet point it. But
bullet point it. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Yeah.
yeah, because in there, that sets it like maybe this is more important than the others or something, but yeah, perfect. I think that's better.
That's a good
So
Excellent idea.
So when I read this pedestrian bridge over Chatsworth, I went
Sounds weird, doesn't it?
because I thought our discussion, I think it was at the last board meeting, was just a street crossing and crosswalk. I don't know where this bridge came from.
No, that's the Voltaire Street Bridge that Joe's been working
No,
on.
I think that what it is that
wonder
I
if
was
that,
looking at that too, Javier. I think that it's just semantics. I think that because, correct me if I'm wrong, people in traffic, isn't there an island or something that's being
Yeah.
fashioned?
Yeah. So
Mhm.
I was
So-
looking at their CIP already. It says installation of pedestrian refuge island media curb extensions rectangular rapid flash beacons in a street light. And I think that's what Mandy was, what we voted on in the board to approve a
Yeah.
letter to get the funding.
Right.
But I didn't read anything about a pedestrian bridge. I'm going, a pedestrian bridge, is that really what we, that's a little
Well,
much.
hell, if they want to put a bridge, I would support that. But no, this was
Yeah.
when I
$5
drafted the
million.
letter, when I drafted that letter, it was to basically make sure that this project gets fully funded and pushed.
Right.
This was being-
Chatsworth Boulevard is what you're talking about, because I'm confused. I was thinking it was the Voltaire Street Bridge
No.
renovation. That's what's been
no.
on my mind. So I'm
No.
completely
No,
off.
the project is a pedestrian, is a kind of a choker thing where the traffic would be reduced to 2 lanes, and the pedestrian refuge islands would be on either up against the curb. So you'd be able to walk, you know,
I
into the
thought that
middle of
was
the
just
street while you're on a curbed section. And there'd be, I'm sure, lights there, the flasher beacons or something.
Right.
And
That's
they
what I
would slow
thought.
down. There was discussion about possibly having the traffic go over a small road hump. I don't know if that is included in that or not, but
I thought that was just going to be a crosswalk, but I think this is a way better situation.
Well, I mean,
That crosswalk.
I now looking at the description that they have in the memo, I think it's semantics or something like you said, Brad. I don't think they're really proposing a bridge.
no, there's no
I
break.
think it's yeah, agreed.
This is,
okay, so
It's just an elaborate crosswalk
Well, so
and
do we
grade.
yeah,
want to add this narrative in the project description? Semicolon after that,
Okay, I think this is better the way you wrote it.
Yeah, that, I think,
well, we need to make sure they know that's what we're talking about, but that it is actually, this is what's on their list, but this is actually what we want. Yeah.
yeah, very good, very
Good
good,
job,
Matt.
Matt.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, zoom
Yeah.
in on that.
here, I'm gonna, not that I'm deprioritizing it, I'm gonna move this one to the bottom. Just because I think this is the one that we're perhaps gonna solicit input from the Transportation Traffic Subcommittee.
Okay. Yeah.
I think this
I
is
think that
great. Good.
Pretty good.
Cool,
good.
so
And at 9/30/22 to
Oh,
the
yeah,
date of the year, please. Yeah, thank you.
and then this is the kind of thing too, where, you know, I think it'd be good so we can get out ahead of this. And then if there's time, perhaps in January, we might
Right.
be able to revisit and either add a second portion, like if we want to say these are our capital priorities, and then we can add a section below if there's time later, or, you know, create a second letter that are here are the, you know, like lower cost, but still priorities, you know, things like some of the other traffic safety things in the memo.
Right, that aren't necessarily capital improvement, big number items, the little ones, right?
Mhm.
Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, no, that sounds reasonable. I think that's a great idea, Matt, because one of the things I was thinking about when they were talking about programs like safety, public safety, they had a section on public safety. We've talked about this in our board, at least a few board members have mentioned it, I was thinking we should request that the city study a Point Loma emergency response, an emergency plan be developed for medical and disasters and they do have an office of emergency services that does that. I think it would really benefit the community if we had something like that developed.
Yes, I agree. Because if something happens, we're not getting out.
Yeah, the thing is that, I mean,
Situation.
here in Point Loma, I mean, aren't we more of a shelter in place? We're the caboose. Come
Yeah,
on, I mean, there's no way we're getting out of anywhere. I
yeah.
mean, you can't, the freeway's backed up during regular rush hour.
Yeah.
Imagine, 300,000 people trying to exit all at the same time.
Yeah, and I was trying, I would try to temper that and say a medical,
Okay,
a medical and emergency response. So if your dad that's living south of Talbot Street needs to get to the hospital at 5 o'clock, by the time he gets there, it's 5:45, you know?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and I think it sheds light too on that Rosecrans and Midway area is our gateway in and out of the peninsula. And this could help shed some light that, hey, we need to get those intersections improved.
Mhm.
Okay, sorry I don't want to interrupt, but it's 8:15 or after now. And as, kind of like a draft of the letter, basically, do we feel like this is good for the night? I can, clean up the little bits like the addressing and whatnot, but in terms of the content of the letter, is this something that we would be ready to make a motion on?
motion to approve.
Okay, Brad, motions to approve.
I'll second it.
Javier seconds, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. Excellent.
Well,
So,
thanks for doing that.
of course,
Yeah, good job, Matt.
No, good job, everybody. Good work.
Yeah, thank you to
Brad,
everyone.
Orla, Paul, Sam, good job.
okay, is there any other business that we should discuss tonight, or motion to adjourn?
Can we stop screen sharing?
Yes.
I got it.
Okay, so yeah, is there any lingering things, Sam?
I move we adjourn, and then possibly though, you should give us a feeling of when we would revisit this letter after it goes to traffic.
Well, okay, so that's a good question. My default would probably be, let's not try to rush and schedule a second meeting between traffic and the full board, because I believe they're postponing for a week, so they would be meeting the Tuesday right before full board. So that doesn't really leave us time. But I think we could tentatively ask now, like, do we want to take this up in December? Full board is going to be dark, but we could still kind of get a jump on it. Is that something we would want to do in early December, or wait until early January when we could pick this up again before full board meeting in January?
Well, that means the third Thursday in January. So is that too late? Did they, it sounded to me like D2 wanted the information sooner than that. So I think you guys have done the work. I think you should send the letter, and just as a courtesy, just send that to Mandy so that we're not stepping on toes with another committee. Because but many of the things on that memo and on that list are traffic. So, this is what we're going to do. This is what we've approved. And we want to let you know if she has any problems with it right away, whether they meet or not, then you guys can like strike it or, whatever. But I don't think there should be any problems. I think you need.
Might end up being a combination letter right away, right?
Yeah, that was my thought now. Like, we've approved it. We want to send it on to them, in which case maybe they just approve it and it comes before full board as we've seen it now, or they may have some proposed changes to it that we can discuss as full board, which I think is reasonable on the timeline.
Yeah, I
do
think that,
too. I do
yeah,
too.
November, get it done.
Yeah, you've done the
Enough
work
for a plate,
and
move on.
send it on, I think.
Right.
Okay, so then do we have a sense for whether there's kind of impetus to try to meet in December, or just wait until January? Or do we want to wait and see how the meeting in a couple weeks goes at full board?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, we can wait, but I see your, I see where you're going, Matt, and I would support meeting in December to have a second memo, or as we talked about, an update ready for January.
Or changes that the board might decide. So
Right.
that they might want to add to that, but we're ready to go and send it off
Right.
early
This one.
January. Yeah, so that's reasonable. Then we can meet again and tweak it however board input affects it.
Okay, so do we want to, I believe there's another committee that meets on first Thursdays on even numbered months.
Is that environmental or something?
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I was just gonna propose, do we want to tentatively plan for first Tuesday next month? No, it's not environmental.
That would be wait a minute, let me be sure I'm in the right month. December 6th would be the first Tuesday, I think. Do you want to pencil it and then you can make changes later or no?
Does that potentially work for everyone?
Yeah, for me, I'm good with that.
Oh, wait, no, sorry, I was confused. It's Parks and Rec, which is first Tuesday of even months.
Yeah,
So
they don't really meet, do they?
not really, but also we're on a Thursday now, and I was thinking that I wanted to avoid conflict with them. Do we want to tentatively say first Thursday in December, which would be
The first,
the first?
up to you guys.
I'm good with it.
If no one has, known conflicts, let's go ahead and say that.
Okay,
Yeah, I've been trying to find a day that would be good to, like, we don't have to meet every month, but when we do meet, it would be good to have the same day. So if first Thursdays provisionally work, let's go with that for now.
same time, 6:30.
Okay.
But I'll put that on the committee page then too.
Thank you, Paul.
I can do
Yeah.
that right now.
And also add Brad if you haven't yet.
Oh, add Brad, okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, Paul.
we want Brad. We like
We want
Brad.
Brad, yeah.
Woo, 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 woo.
Awesome.
I
All
gotta
right.
do something.
Here,
Well,
lady, lady.
I think then we can go ahead and adjourn.
Yes, so
Great
moved.
meeting you guys. You guys are amazing. It's so fun to listen to you and watch your brains work and everything else. You guys, it's wonderful work.
Yeah, well, I want to thank Matt for doing such a great job as chair here.
Yeah, good
Thank
job, Matt.
Absolutely, guys. I'm gonna stop the recording here.
All right.